Welcome back, everybody. Second episode of Badger Pack Sports here. We got a big week going down with the Combine. Brian Gutekunst got an interview there that we're going to talk about. Also going to talk about a little bit about the Combine and just some comments that Brian Gutekunst was making. So, hope you guys are ready for the show. Got my guy Justin back with me. Justin, how you feeling?
Good, man. We're good to be here. The combine's here. I feel like we just watched that Super Bowl blowout, and now here we are in the combine, prepping for the draft, uh, really analyzing lots of things that are being said by our GM. We got a fun show ahead. Excited to be on show number 2, and let's roll, man. Let's roll.
Oh yeah, lots of topics, but I think the big one uh, that we're going to be talking about to start out with is Jaire Alexander. Just Gutekunst making comments about him, not really giving much information about him. But then obviously the Twitter or Xverse, whatever you want to call it, basically says that Jaire will not be back with the Packers, and I think that's big. I mean, but obviously the best ability is availability, and he hasn't really been able to do that. I think he's talented when he's on the field, but he hasn't been able to be there. So I'm guessing they will just be continuing to shop him, and I think that's the best thing you can do because I know you save money with cap space if you cut him after June 1st, but I think getting a pick for him is going to be more valuable than the money at this point.
Yeah, at this point it's time to move on. Sometimes, relationships are doomed at some point, and I think we're at that stage. We even saw it towards the end of the season, and Jair at his locker at the end of the year when they were cleaning him out. You can tell that there was some displeasure there, and I think the ship has sailed on him in Green Bay. He's been a tremendous asset to the team. Unfortunately, the last 2 seasons, playing 7 games, like you said, Robbie, availability is the best ability, and it was just, and I think there was just a lot of frustration on how the injuries were handled. Coming back for the Chicago game earlier in this middle of the season, and then just left mysteriously, and then we were all kind of waiting for him to go on IR. Was he going to come back in 3 weeks? Even LaFleur at his pressers was showing some frustration. Hard to tell if that's Jaire's camp not being forthright with what's going on with his injuries or the medical staff just unsure. I think it just created a lot of angst in the building, and I think it's just best for both parties. I guess Robbie with Jaire, like, what are you thinking we can get for him? Like, what's a realistic? I would say what's a realistic package, and two, what would you prefer to get back for him?
I mean, so one, I would say that something that negatively affects the Packers in this situation is I think the free agency class for corners actually pretty strong this year. From what I've heard and kind of seen, I think it's only like a sixth round value. I think the contract's going to hurt him because he's been hurt. So it's not like he's got a cheap contract that a team just wants to take a flyer. They're like, we're going to have to eat some of this money. So I think I'm hoping you could get a fifth, but like I said, I've heard only a sixth round pick, but maybe you could package that up with something else and try to get something better there too.
Yeah, I'm with you. And his value, unfortunately, is pretty low, and he comes with a pricey contract as well. Um, It'd be interesting to see if we could pair him up with some draft picks and get another proven player, perhaps. We know Goody also talked in the presser at the combine that he is alluding that he wants more draft picks in this year's draft. So, you know, he's always looking to get, more more guys at the table, more opportunities, more bites at the apple to get young talent into the room. Last 2 seasons, youngest team in the NFL. We'll see for year 3 in that again, but we know that Gutekunst loves having his draft capital and guys like Alexander that are expensive, causing distractions, and always injured. I think it's safe to say he's played his last down in Green Bay.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely safe to say. I mean, like I said, just hoping he can get a pick for him. I think Gutekunst likes to move around the board, and any more bullets he's got in his chamber, he wants them. So, but yeah, moving on from there, I think just another guy. If we're talking about players still on the team, just talking about Lucas Van Ness. We talked about it on our first episode, talking about the Eagles, what helped them win the Super Bowl, and that was their defensive line. And Lucas Van Ness was a guy picked early at 13 there, and he just hasn't really produced the way a 13th overall selection should produce. And so, once again, though, he's going into that year 3, and the Packers for a long time have talked about the jump from year 2 to year 3. That's where they expect the biggest jumps from guys. So, but if he can't do that, I think they're definitely gonna be starting to look into the free agency. I think that's, going back to Jaire, I think I already said it, one of the deeper classes in free agency is the defensive back, so I think they're gonna be looking to spend some money on the defensive backs and defensive line.
Yeah, and Van Ness it's been a frustrating ride with him. And I remember when we drafted him at 13, the everyone was talking about how much of a freak athlete he is and calling him Hercules, and the guy is chiseled and looks the part. But we just haven't seen it translate consistently enough. And he's shown flashes. I still remember the week 1 in Chicago where he chased down Justin Fields when Fields was trying to get around the edge and run for a big play. He chased him down, and I kind of opened my eyes. I'm like, this guy could be something. But
Yep.
we've always been longing for more, especially at 13. And this is where the draft makes me a little nervous, and I feel like sometimes we overthink talent and we look at measurables too much, or we look at the combine and look at the numbers and the RAS scores, and we just fall in love with that, but we don't watch the tape. And Van Ness didn't start in Iowa, and we drafted him in the top 15. It's kind
Yep.
of crazy, and the main reason was because of his athleticism, and he has the look to him, and we wanted to develop him, and it hasn't panned out thus far. This is a big year for him, and Gutekunst said himself that he expects for him to take a big jump. So hopefully, calling him out publicly in this has maybe stirred a fire in Van Ness, and we'll see what he can do with it.
Yep.
You know, along with Van Ness, at defensive line, we need some improvement there, Robbie.
Yeah. No, he had a starter snap count, that's what they said. Only the seniors get to start. That was their excuse, but it's like, and he did produce, but like you said, he was able to chase down Justin Fields. But that's in the open field. I think with his 40 time, yeah, he's fast, but it's like he just doesn't have the bend. He's just a little bit stiffer. It's like he needs to be able to work on that. I thought when they switched to the 4-3 that he was going to have some better play, and I just didn't see it. So maybe a second year and Halfley's defense will help him, but I'm just not seeing it right now. So
Yeah, and I'm curious too, and we did see the defensive line improve incrementally throughout the year. So
yep,
maybe another full season in Halfley system can help guys like Rashawn Gary and Van Ness to gel and get their feet wet in the um, in the 4-3. So it is quite a bit different from the 3-4 we ran.
yep,
But anyways, like transitioning, Robbie, Goody talked a lot about being aggressive, and I think that's a uh, something that's could be objective. Our opinion of aggressive can be a lot different than his, but what are you thinking he's let's read between the lines a little bit here. Like, where are you thinking when he brings up being aggressive this offseason? Where do you think he's looking? What are some guys that you're thinking about or positions?
yeah. I think it's going to go back to what we talked about in the first episode, but the valuable positions that we need right now. So that's going to be defensive back, it's going to be defensive line, and it's going to be wide receiver. Unfortunately, I don't think there's much in the wide receiver class. T. Higgins, franchise tagged again. So unless you're trading for him, we already talked about how valuable draft capital is to Goody. That's not going to happen. Chris Godwin's going to be the top guy. There's going to be a lot of money thrown his way. Packers have a decent cap space. They're at around 40 million open cap space there, but you got teams like the Patriots that I think are over like 100. It's just ridiculous with their amount of cap space that they can throw at these guys. So then, like I said, I think the biggest ones you're going to be looking at is the defensive line, edge rushers, and then cornerbacks. Probably a guy like DJ Reed from the Jets. It's kind of at the top of my list.
Yeah, and in the free agent class, we'll cover lots of that, lots of different targets that Packers can be looking at. But one news item that came across everybody's feed today was the Packers being tied to DK Metcalf.
Yep.
The Packers have a very strong connection with the Seahawks with John Schneider in the front office, being a Green Bay guy, and we've pulled off different trades with them in the past. You know, what were your initial thoughts when you saw that come across your feed, Robbie?
Yeah, so I actually saw a video right when that happened from Bass, and so the first thing that it was saying was a Packers young wide receiver and an early draft pick. So my mind basically went to Romeo Dobbs and either a second or third round pick. I would do that all day long. Dobbs for Metcalf. However, it sounded like the Seahawks will only take pick 23 and a receiver. They're not even going to entertain the offer. And I think that's a little too rich, in my opinion. Now, like I said, if it's that second or third round pick and Dobbs, if you want to do Dobbs and Alexander and a third, I'd do that, because I think Seattle would be looking for a corner too. So maybe if you do a package like that, maybe they'll go for it.
Yeah, I am on that boat. I definitely got excited when I saw that article come across in our feed. Obviously, the Packers are notorious for quote unquote being in talks.
Yep.
So will this be another circumstance of that? Possibly. But it's nice to see that Goody and the staff aren't ignoring some obvious holes that we've had or that we've talked about, right? And at the end of the day, a guy like DK Metcalf paired up with Jordan Love with solid guys underneath him in Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Tucker Kraft. Like now you're talking about more opportunities for guys like Reed who really exploded last year, but when teams keyed in on him, he kind of had a quiet stretch in the season there. Um, we'll see. I'm cautiously optimistic. But I'm with you on, the package we could give up. I definitely agree 23, the pick 23 should be off the table. But a guy like DK, he's been relatively healthy in his career. A freak athlete. The guy has wheels in a type of, he has that toughness that fits the NFC North,
Yep.
playing outdoors in the cold. I think it would be a tremendous fit.
Yep. He would need to be re-signed probably too if you want to keep him. But trading for him, he only brings over a cap hit of around $17 million. So that's really not bad there. Like I said, if you were able to throw Jaire in the mix, but that might be a case too with his cap space. But I'm guessing him getting traded, it'd probably be a little bit lower there for the Seahawks as well. Dobbs is a cheap guy, so that'd be nice for them.
Yeah, that we'll have to see. And Goody shed some light on the talent moving forward, whether it's currently in the building or guys that are outside the building or guys that were in the combine. But he also hit on one other topic, and I want to close on the Goody presser here, Robbie. And I know you follow the college game very closely, but I thought it was interesting how he was asked about the impacts of NAL and scouting. Historically, the Packers tend to target younger guys with more upside versus guys maybe in that little higher age in the draft. But what are your thoughts on that? How do you think it's impacted the Packers, and how do you think it's impacted just the game as a whole?
Yeah, I think obviously young guys, you want to be able to kind of see that talent like grow throughout a system. I think it's hard when you see like a guy blow up for a year, but if you've been able to see the steady development throughout a program, I think you can kind of base your projection there. But then I think also too, like going into these guys, once they have one good year, then they transfer. I think sometimes it takes them a little while too to get going. So maybe even from a fan perspective, it can be difficult there because you're like, this guy didn't have that great numbers, but it's like he was still learning the system. So I definitely think it's going to be difficult. And I mean, you look at a lot of guys in this class, like it used to be that if you were 24, I mean, you were falling down draft boards, but now it's becoming a regular thing that it's like, oh yeah, this guy's 24, 25. You know, everyone's going the BYU route. They're just not doing more missions. So
Yeah, it's spot on, and you can't blame these kids, right? The amount of money that
yeah,
we're hearing being thrown at them to stick around at a school like Texas or a school like Alabama or Ohio State for an additional year, it's becoming more and
yeah,
more, prevalent, and it's going to be interesting. It's really going to be interesting to see how this kind of translates into the NFL. And I know Goody talked about how his scouting department has had to adjust their ways of evaluating players because of this. because you got to think about a lot of these scouts have great relationships with these college head coaches. And the thing is, a lot of these college head coaches that bring in these guys out the transfer portal, they barely know them. They didn't recruit these kids. They didn't sit on the couch with the parents selling Texas football or selling Wisconsin football. They're kind of coming out into the wild, wild west in the NIL world and throwing paychecks at them and saying, "Come play for me, and we'll take care of you from there." And it's going to be interesting to see how these guys become, how they're evaluated as talent. And you hit some really good points there, Robbie. So we'll have to see, man. It's going to be fun. We'll see if Goody and the team can pull trigger on a trade or whether for a player or something in the draft. It's going to be a lot of fun to keep an eye on.
Yeah. Look for a Goody to probably trade up in the second round. He seems to like to do that. I think it makes sense. He doesn't necessarily always like trading up in that first. If he sees a guy in that second round, he'll go up and get him there. So Edgerrin Cooper last year worked out.
And I think this is the perfect draft to do this. It's a very top heavy draft. The top 8 to 10 picks are solid, potential stars, but then like 10 to 50, I mean, it's really, what is the team that's drafting them? What do the boards look like and how they value them? I think there's a lot of guys that are going to be drafted in day 2 that are going to be Pro Bowl level players that are going to be taken off the board. And so that I agree with you. There's a lot of chance to move around there.
Yep. No, there's only 32 picks in the first round, and I mean, there's good value past pick 32. Like a guy that gets drafted at 23 or valued at 23 could be taken later in the 30s. I mean, there's going to be value there, and so if somebody's falling, you got to go up and get them, I think. So, but yeah, no, the Combine, that's definitely been fun to watch. I mean, we're recording this on Friday night, so we've only been able to see defensive line, linebackers. Then you got also the corners and the safeties running. So definitely been a little bit of movement. Definitely some guys in the corner room going a little fast there, but big boys, they were just big. So
absolutely. Well, Robbie, this is a topic you've been really excited to talk about. Some painful memories here, but it's draft season. So let's talk. We spent a lot of time talking about guys that we think are going to be awesome for the Packers, and I think it'd be kind of fun if we talk about some guys that we thought were going to be just fantastic fits for the green and gold, but end up just busting and creating some pretty painful memories for us. And we're going to do a top 5 Packers draft bust since 2010. So we're not going to go too far back, but that's 15 years. That's plenty of time. I mean, since the last Super Bowl that we've won. So we're going to kind of go down the list and let us know in the comments if we missed anybody.
Oh yeah.
If there's somebody that you're like, guys, you completely missed out on them. Let us know. We can definitely have some commentary around that. But with that, Robbie, who do you have as number 5?
Yep, number 5. And I will say my list, the people that I put on this list for busts are only first and second round guys. So number 5 for me was Jason Spriggs, offensive lineman out of Indiana. Remember him running a fast 40 and thinking that he could be the next Lane Johnson.
Yeah, second rounder out of Indiana. Definitely a guy, especially that we moved up to try and get to. Definitely makes that sting just a little bit more. So yeah, Jason Spriggs at 5, right with you there. Who do you have at number 4?
Number 4, I have Josh Jones. I want to say he was out of NC State. And so he had a good 40 time. Seemed like he could be a hard hitter. It was kind of that time of like the hybrid safety linebacker. I think it was the Deion Buchanan days and he came in, he played a couple of games, had a couple sacks, and everyone was really excited for him his rookie year. Got a little bit of playing time, and then the second year he was just gone. He just disappeared. I don't even know what happened to him. Just disappeared into oblivion.
Yeah, I remember when we saw him, I was just thinking, man, this guy's going to be a playmaker. He's going to be flying around the field. Then we just found out huge liability in coverage. had all the tools athletically. Watching him, he would jump off the screen. He actually was pretty fluid in how he moved,
Yep.
but he lacked instincts and got burned and torched. And I think that's why he just fell off the face of the earth, like you said. So Josh Jones at number 4, 2017 second rounder. At number 3, this is a guy I remember very well, Robbie. Who do you got there?
Yep, number 3, and I'm sad to say I asked for this move. I wanted him, and that would be trading up to get Jarrell Worthy out of Michigan State. Big defensive lineman.
Yeah, defensive lineman tore his ACL his rookie year, and man, that 2010, 2011, 2012. I mean, torn ACLs even just that long ago were much more impactful than they are today. Still a major injury, but for a guy that needed to explode off the line in the defensive
Yep,
line, tough, right? Very tough. And we ended up, he only ended up playing 16 games for us, and then we traded him to the Patriots. And guy that was dominant at Michigan State, was a very much celebrated move, like you said, Robbie. You were cheering this on, and he kind of just fizzled out like a firework on a rainy night. You
yep.
really hate to see it, and that's why he's on the list, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, they talked about him being a snap jumper. So now whenever I hear a guy's a good snap jumper, it always makes me kind of do a double take. Like, hey, is this guy actually that explosive? Is he actually doing a good job getting off the line? Because I'm like, I've been burned by that now one time, and I won't forget it.
All right, man. Number 2, what do you got?
Mm. Number 2 is going to be Quentin Rollins out of Miami of Ohio. So
Shout out
him
Ben
and
Roethlisberger.
yep, shout out Ben Roethlisberger. So it's like him and Demarius Randall, who was drafted in the first round. I guess they were roommates, I think, for the Senior Bowl or something, and they were all excited to be drafted together. But Quentin Rollins just did not amount to much of anything. I don't even think much on special teams.
Yeah, those are 2 names: Quentin Rollins, Demarius Randall. That pretty bad duo there. Randall didn't make the list. He did have a little bit of production for us, and he got us to Sean Kaiser. So
Yeah,
he did provide some value there, even though Kaiser didn't do much for us either. But Quentin
but
Rollins,
he did leave the field during one game. He just left. So
yes, yeah, and I think Demarius Randall fit very well with the Cleveland Browns organization there. Quentin Rollins is a weird guy. Is a second round, and I think all of us were sort of scratching our heads a bit. College basketball player,
yeah.
limited football experience, but just had athleticism off the charts. And this is the kind of pick that scares me with Goody. And this kind of a lot of Quentin Rollins I see in Lucas Van Ness, where it's like this guy that tests super well, the numbers look great, but the productivity isn't there. So we'll have to see. But just
Quentin
very
Rollins
disappointing.
was not as athletic though. He
Right.
he didn't run as well. He was a ball hawk. That was his big kind of the big news around him. I think he had a lot of interceptions that year, and I think that was a Ted pick. Because when did Goody take over? It was later because Jaire was his
Yeah.
first.
Yep. I think this definitely was a Ted. One of Ted's last drafts, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah, and he had a torn Achilles in 2017, so
yeah.
that's almost a death sentence for many defensive backs too. So tough draw for Quentin Rollins, but hope he's doing well in life. We'll have to see what he's up to nowadays.
Oh,
Not playing for the
oh,
Packers, we probably won't see him in the Ring of Honor anytime soon. So
oh, but if you want to talk about a guy that got hurt though, real quick, Jonathan Franklin. That was my boy. Loved
mm,
him. So sad he got hurt. He had one game of production, then got hurt. So shout out Jonathan Franklin.
oh, that's a name I have totally forgot about him. Wow, what a name drop, Robbie.
Yeah.
All right,
That was
man.
my happy thought before getting to number 1. Okay. Number 1, I think this is probably everyone's number 1. That's Derek Sherrod, offensive lineman out of I really don't even remember. Justin, do you have it
I
down
think he
there?
was Tennessee. I want to say he was
Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Okay.
Let me I know I'm
I'll
breaking
say
rules
this
of
wrong.
Derek Sherrod, Mississippi State.
Oh,
I
okay.
stand
That's actually
corrected.
what I was thinking. I'm like, it was a purple jersey. It was a purple jersey. So yeah, Derek Sherrod, Mississippi State, but just a guy who couldn't make it at left tackle, was always hurt. I think they tried shifting him to the right side. He couldn't play on the right side, so he could only play left tackle. And like I said, he was just always hurt. So like once again, going back to the best ability is availability. It's like he was a backup and he couldn't even be available as a backup, which is just the worst of the worst.
Yeah, I would say the only thing that I would look positive of that is that was the draft post Super Bowl, so we picked towards the back end of the draft. I think was that I believe that was the last pick of the draft for the first round. Um, you hate to call him a bust just because of an injury, but he just never found his footing. And when you're drafted in that first round, you're going to be looked at a much higher regard. Just a bad luck for the guy, and unfortunately, he's the number one on this list, and hopefully he doesn't watch the program. If so, hey Derek, sorry,
Yeah,
buddy. And you guys can all roast me in the comments for saying Tennessee over Mississippi State.
yeah,
I deserve that, but and I mentioned the name, and I'm telling you right now, if Lucas Van Ness does not step up his game this year, he is a candidate for this
yeah.
list at 13. And I
Oh
I do
yeah,
not take any joy in saying that. Shout out to my buddy Drew, big Iowa fan. He when we drafted him, he was all in my messages saying, "What a pick! He's going
yeah.
to get a Van Ness Packer jersey." And I don't think you've gotten one yet, dude. So I want you to get one because that means he's doing well. So we want to see Van Ness step it up here in year 3.
Better off finding a Brian Balaga jersey. I would.
Yes, exactly. We actually had a lot of good Hawkeyes. Micah Hyde,
Yeah,
solid player for the Packers. So man, we could probably do a whole episode on Hawkeyes that worked out for the Packers.
yeah. But we
Well,
won't.
Robbie, that closes out that segment on the top 5.
Yep.
Bust. I would say we can close here on a quick hitter. And Robbie, for those that don't know Robbie, he is the king of the combine. I know you've been diving in. We did do an episode or our first show on some guys to look at. But Robbie, as numbers have started to come in, you mentioned earlier it's Friday, the 28th of February, so we still have a little bit of the combine to go. But who are some guys, just listing them off, and maybe a couple nuggets you have on them, but guys that have kind of jumped off the page to you that you can see being trended to the Packers, and who do you got? What are we thinking here?
Yeah, I think there's maybe one or two guys that wouldn't go to the Packers. I think there's just one, and that's Nick Emewarie. That's a safety out of South Carolina. Dude jumped 43 inches for his vertical, which is like jumping out of the gym like he should be a basketball player. So the Packers won't draft him because we went safety heavy last year, but his stock's definitely up. Uh, there's obviously some guys we talked about in our first show, but I'll just start with Jameer Stewart, edge rusher there. Weight dropped down to around 260, ran a fast 40, so his stock is up. Jaheed Campbell, he ran a 4.53, and I mean that dude looks smooth in all the drills, but like not only smooth when he was hitting those bags, you were hearing him pop. So his stock was up. Trey Amos, I thought he caught the ball well. His 40 checked out. He ran a 4 in the 4.4s. So I'd say he's about even. But like I think if he would have ran the 4.5, I think that's what would have dropped him. He maybe raised a little bit. Derek Harmon, uh, defensive lineman, was at Michigan State, transferred to Oregon. I'd say he's about even. Did run a sub 540, so that was good for him. Maxwell Hairston out of the University of Kentucky, definitely would say he's a winner, running the fastest 40 so far at a 4.28 official. And I mean,
Wow.
caught the ball well. So he was moving well. All the drills. And then the next one, Darian Porter, cornerback out of Iowa State. I heard he was supposed to run fast. He's a little bit older guy, transitioned from wide receiver to corner. So I would kind of keep him at even. I think he's been kind of solidified in that second round. I don't think the fast 40 will really jump him because he's kind of been known to be at that spot. Zaha Frazier, that was a guy out of that was University UT the Roadrunners. I forget what it is.
UTEP,
UTSA.
El Paso,
Yep,
UTEP or San Antonio?
San Antonio.
Yeah, UTSA. Okay.
So he's like 6'3". I think he ran like a 4.3 40 there. So I mean that's just a big corner. So I think that'd be a guy like the Siobhan Rebel hype that was around. Maybe he'll kind of get that. And the big comparison was Tariq Woolen, safety, who went to Seattle and played well. Next guy, linebacker out of Oklahoma State, Nick Martin. I thought he looked smooth. He ran a fast 40, so I'd say he's moving up there. And then Demetrius Knight, another linebacker. He ran fast. Him and Jahad Campbell both got up to over 22.6 miles per hour on their 40. So they were the two fastest linebackers as far as miles per hour running 40. And then James Pierce ran the fastest 40 for the edges. They were talking about character concerns for him, but I think with the 40 and just the potential, I think a team's still going to draft him high. Just, we'll take him. We'll worry about the character concerns a little bit later.
Green Bay, there's not much for him to do to get out of character, so
Yeah,
he'll be fine.
I was going to say if he fell just because of character, I would not mind that. Next guy, Landon Jackson. I think the speed was definitely in question. Everyone's been saying he's a good run stopper, but then it's kind of like, okay, well, how fast is he? And so he was able to put down a good time there. And then next guy was CJ West. This guy's out of Indiana. And the big thing I think that stuck out to me is he ran a good 40, but then his pro comp was Kenny Clark. So, I mean, when they threw that up there, I'm like, okay, the draft stock's going up, but he looked smooth. He looked good too. So that's what I got as far as guys right now. Lots of guys that I would say moving up. I wouldn't say there's anybody off the radar except for that Za Frazier guy and probably Nick Martin that kind of came out of nowhere that I had heard a little bit about Nick Martin, but guys I hadn't really heard of that moved up for me.
Yeah, Robbie, insight's always great with you and the combine. And I'm fairly certain we're going to do a post-combine review and probably talk about the guys we dropped in the first episode of our program and see what their tests looked like and how they're trending, and guys that, that jumped off the page for us, and specifically probably positions of need that we think the Packers will do at 23. But yeah, the combine is still going through the weekend, so perhaps in a couple episodes in the future we will drop a post combine review.
Yep.
So Rob, any closing thoughts? We covered a lot of ground here on Goody's presser, a fun little segment on the draft bus, and then some of the guys are jumping out to see in the combine.
Yeah, all I got is it's draft season, baby. Just hang on to the roller coaster.
Absolutely. For those to the program, thank you for making us part of your day. Thank you for watching. Please drop a like, subscribe, put some comments in there. We're going to be very active in trying to grow this channel. To those that are return listeners, thank you. We really appreciate the support on the channel. And with that, we will see you next time on Badger Pack Sports.
See you.